The Saturday. Saturday the journalist had something to write about. Saturday we decided something, and suddenly it was carried over to the next day. And I think the best way to illustrate that is that when Friesacher was on pole in Melbourne, he didn't know he was on pole until somebody told him, because he hadn't worked out the aggregate system. So we've done that. But I'm not a great supporter of any of this year's rule changes.
I would like, if you have a question, you identify yourself and identify also to whom you address your question, please. Anyone? S'il vous plaît, vous identifiez et identifiez la personne à qui vous adressez, s'il vous plaît. Des questions?
Sure, my name is Neil Gamas. Question to both drivers, actually. Just like to get to know your feelings about this year in the Formula One.
Yeah, Formula One is just great, and there are only 20 places in the whole world, and to keep up in Formula One is already, I think, from each young guy a race driver is a dream. And now we have done the first step, but now the hard work begins.
Yes, the same story that I'm telling, there are only a few places in the King class. I think over the whole world, Formula One will be always number one in our sport. And it was my goal already when I started my career, and finally achieved it, and hopefully it can grow every day.
I could keep going on and on and on, so stop me otherwise. Question to the team manager. What are your feelings about the Montreal circuit, especially when the new coating, the new asphalt has been put on?
Well, actually, very curious to see the new asphalt and to see the results of the tires on the new asphalt. Well, it looks like both drivers, well, they don't know the circuit, but it looks like they both like the circuit. So I think we have good chances to reach our first goal. At the moment is to beat our yellow rivals that are Jordan. So we'll see.
Yellow rivals?
It's much nicer than yellow peril.
That was a politically correct answer.
I always ask the same question I ask every year. What do you like to eat? Pasta.
Well, thankfully you've got some in there, so we're got a bit worried when we drove past McDonald's on the way here.
Does any journalist would like to ask any question?
I'm going to do it at the end.
Okay. Anybody else? John?
Yeah, John. Wait, John. John?
Thank you. My question is Paul. As a team owner, leader, everything goes on, especially in F1, it's a whole high profile. What do you think about the new rules with the tires? Is that like a big advantage to you, or?
No, the new rules are clearly a disadvantage to small teams because they were brought in with unprecedented lack of notice to the teams. They were effectively thrust upon us at the end of last year when Formula One was going through a very traumatic period with the closure of Ford and Jaguar, and the fact that part of that trio was also the engine supplier Cosworth, which supplied Jordan and Minardi at the time. So to have all the rule changes come in at the same time as the uncertainty over engine supply wasn't a good period, and knee-jerk, not properly thought through regulations always disadvantages teams with the small budgets because we can't respond quickly enough. As a result, Minardi and Jordan have been severely disadvantaged by this year's regulations. And as with the first part of your question, the tyres, well, I think we saw last week, or 2 weeks ago, just what the results of these tyre regulations can do. And if anybody, any rational person can argue that that was in the interest of safety when we see a wheel fly off, luckily it didn't result in a serious accident, but another circuit, another time, another place, that could result in an unthinkable accident, and were that to happen, there's no doubt that the blame for that would be laid fairly and squarely at the FIA's doorstep, because have no doubt about this, all of the regulations this year were not voted for by the teams, particularly not the Thailand.
Mr. Stoddart, following question on that, do you think it should have been black flag? I heard this morning they did 100 kilometers on that.
They did.
Flat, or not flat tires, but with a
No, with a flat spot. I mean, we said at the start of the year when there was going to be no opportunity to change tyres. I mean, you look at it on the television now, you see a car come in for a pit stop, and you see 8 guys sit there and look at the tyres. Yeah, they're still black and they're still round, but they can't actually touch them or do anything with them, and yet we have perfectly good fresh sets sitting in the garage. It's not about cost saving. It might be argued, and you have to judge the results that we've seen so far this season, that it has provided some good racing. And in the end, no matter how much we might not want to think it's like this, people do like to see accidents, they do like to see excitement in the races. So one school of argument is that it's spiced up the racing, and I couldn't argue against that, I won't try. But to do so under the guise of safety, if, doing 20, 30 laps when you can't see your pit board, you can't see anything on your dash because the vibration is so bad, and then ultimately there's a couple of laps to go. What driver's going to pull in to change his tyre? No one. They're going to keep going.
Yeah, but do you think that the race organization should have black flagged him? Personally, what's your personal thought on that?
The personal view is it shouldn't have got to that situation in the first place. If there'd been clarity of the rules, McLaren had a good enough lead to come in and do something about the tyres. I'm sure if you asked them, they would probably say that they feared doing that for fear of the grey area in the regulations of whether they would have been disqualified or not for changing the tyre. And that's why they didn't do it. So, yeah, it's not a good situation, and it needs to be dealt with before we're sitting here having a conversation about a very serious or a fatal accident, because having that wheel come off where it did, how it did, this time we've got away with it. Next time, maybe not. Particularly places like Canada and particularly USA, where you can have some very, very high-speed accidents.
I got a serious one. Are you guys gonna have fun this weekend?
We're going to try pretty hard, and we're out there to beat the Jordans. We're out there to actually score a point, and that's our aim for the weekend.
Adam Hay-Nichols from the Red Bulletin. Question for Mr. Stoddart. We're on this side of the Atlantic now, and looking forward towards this weekend and looking forward towards Indianapolis. What do you think Formula One has to do to better establish itself this side of the pond?
I think we're moving in the right direction. I mean, certainly with the introduction of Red Bull and the opportunity for Scott Speed, I mean, you need to actually have American involvement or North American involvement if you want to further the sport. They've got some tremendous sports out this part of the world that have all the media attention, the NASCARs, etc. If you want to break into that market, you've got to have someone who's from that part of the world competing in Formula One.
Questions? Yep.
My name is Serge Mas. Mr. Stoddart, could you tell us what you think about the Ferrari signing the Concord Accords?
They haven't actually signed it. That's a bit of a myth. They've signed what I believe is called a binding letter of intent to sign it when and if it's ever offered in a format that's signable. Now that would, one supposes, involve the rest of the teams talking about it, negotiating it, since we're all signatories to it. And of course that hasn't taken place, so interesting. We're talking about something that happened on the 19th of January this year, and here we are almost into June, almost at the end of June, by the time we get back to the States at least. And no further meetings have been called, no progress has been made, so who knows, maybe they'll be racing themselves in 08.
Questions?
Last question?
Questions?
Okay. We're going to take a few minutes. We're going to go in a straight line. If anybody has anything to get autographed, we'll do it right away so that we can go and have some fun with the first. And